Happy August, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Dark Room, where two blind cinephiles illuminate the sided. I'm Lee Pugsley.
I'm Alex Howard.
And this is a podcast hosted by two legally blind guys for film lovers of all abilities. Today, we're taking a little bit of a deviation from our standard movie talk, but we do have something industry related. We have a very special guest with us today, Diana Elizabeth Jordan, who is a very dear friend of mine. Diana is an award-winning actor, filmmaker, coach, and speaker who has trailblazed for disability advocacy in so many ways. She has appeared on many TV and film projects, and most recently in the HBO show, The Pit. Diana, thank you so much for being here. It's such a joy to finally have you on our show.
Oh, dear. Thank you so much for having me, Allison and Lee. I'm very happy to be here.
And we're so excited to dive into your journey within the entertainment industry, talking about disability, your work, and the state of the entertainment industry and where it's headed in terms of disability representation. And something really fun for both me and Alex is that we both know Diana from different circles. I first met Diana through the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge 2 years ago. And since then, we've done some work together. We've been on a few panels together. We've also been presenters at the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge award ceremony, and just had a wonderful time getting to know each other. And Diana is always such a warm and encouraging and wonderful individual.
Yes, and I know Diana from the Respectability, Now Disability Belongs, but we used to be the Respectability Entertainment Lab for People with Disabilities. And so we did the same lab program in 2020.
Let's go ahead and just dive right into it now, Diana. I know that you've had a very illustrious career and have had so many amazing opportunities. So if you don't mind, could you just start off by giving an overview of your career and also how disability has shaped your journey within the entertainment industry?
Sure. I feel very fortunate. I've worked in TV, film. I've done short films. I got to do The Pit recently, which was one of the most amazing experiences. I did a film last year called Hollywood Grit, which is on Amazon. A few years ago, I did a spot on SWAT. So I've had and then numerous HCC Disability Film Challenge films, which is how I got to know you and your amazing work on working on 48-hour film challenges. So I love doing challenges because I also do a lot of improvisation. I'm in the lab ensemble at Improv Theater and so it's the comedy improv ensemble. I guess I always say, I'm that kid. I think I'm that typical kid who had a dream. I grew up in Oak Park, Illinois, which is outside of Chicago, and I always loved acting. I think I've known ever since I was a little girl that's what I wanted to do. I still remember seeing a production of Romeo and Juliet in Oak Park, Illinois, and when hate to spoil it for you, but there was a moment when Romeo killed Tybalt. There was a moment where the actor who played Tybalt fell backward and everybody caught him. And it was staged, but I still remember, and this was years ago, there was a complete silence. And you could hear a pin drop. And it was so magical. When I was a kid, those are the things that made me know this is what I want to do. I went to a high school that had a great theater department, and they were supportive of me. I was always mainstream. But I think I've had this desire. I went to undergrad and graduate school, and I got my MFA in acting at Cal State Long Beach. I was the first actor with a disability to do that. So, yeah, I've worked a lot, and it has been challenging. But I always say a challenging journey has been worth it to me. So, yeah, that's kind of the overview. I also direct, I also teach. I taught for 27 years at a place called Performing Arts Studio West, and I taught other actors with disabilities. I recently left that job for new adventures, but it was a great experience while I was there.
For people that don't know you, can you expand a little bit on your disability and talk about how has there been anyone who has told you you can't do what you do because of your disability and how you overcame those challenges?
Sure. My disability is cerebral palsy, which is a neurological, it affects the motor area of the brain. When I was born and they went to deliver me, they noticed my heartbeat had dropped. So they did an emergency C-section on my mom. And then I didn't breathe on my own for 45 minutes. The doctors worked on me for 45 minutes before I started breathing on my own. So, cerebral palsy is a neurological condition. It affects my speech and my gait and my motor skills. But yeah, I live independently. I do a lot, but that's cerebral palsy primarily affects a person's motor skills. So again, mine is affected primarily my speech and my gait. But it's not a monolith. I have friends with cerebral palsy whose their speeches are not impacted. I have friends who have cerebral palsy who are wheelchair users. So there's not a monolith for cerebral palsy. A disability is not a monolith, either is cerebral palsy.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's something that, I know we've mentioned from time to time here on the show, but just wanting to reiterate to the listener that disability is not binary. It's very much a spectrum. So if you know someone in one category of disability, whether that's a wheelchair user or someone from the deaf community or someone with cerebral palsy or in the blind community, it's like, one person. It's not a one size fits all. That doesn't mean that every person within that disability category is going to have the exact same temperament, the exact same needs, exact same accommodations, exact same modes of operation. And I think that's a really important thing for all of us to remember.
And even to break it down further, I mean, I have a neurological condition, so I can identify with Diana, but my neurological condition heavily affects my eyesight, so I also identify with Lee. So yeah, it's a big spectrum of things.
Yeah, I'm in a field where communication and speech is very important, and I have a speech difference. So that's always been one of the challenges for me, or sometimes my speech has been mistaken for being intoxicated, which I'm not. So I think one of the main things has always been speech because I'm in a field where speech and how we use our voices is paramount. Uh, I grew up having speech therapy. I work on my speech. But I'm also very open, especially when I do improv. I will say to my company members, if we're doing a scene and you miss something, please ask me to repeat it. I will say to a director, if you don't get something, please ask me to repeat it. So I think that puts the discomfort, hopefully rid the discomfort because it's still a professional setting and I want to be heard. My speech difference is mild, but there are times when someone misses something, which happens there are times when I'll be talking to my sister and I miss something she says, and my sister doesn't have a speech difference. That is one of the things that, as an actor, I'm aware of. I have to deal with, and I'm also aware of something other people who may hire me may see that as a barrier to what I can do and what I can play. I don't, but I'm aware that other people may see that as a barrier or a issue.
And for people who are unfamiliar with cerebral palsy. I believe RJ Mitty from Breaking Bad, he had cerebral palsy too, right?
Yes, he does. Yes.
Okay. So as
Yeah.
an entertainment
And
professional,
Jerry Jewell also has cerebral palsy, was one of the pioneers in rubber rousers and break. Let me repeat that. Jerry Jewell also has cerebral palsy, and she was someone who I saw when I was younger and thought, oh, she can do it, I can do it. And Jerry had become a friend of mine, so someone who I watched as a mentor, someone I aspired to be, or who someone who gave me, showed me that it was okay, that it was possible, is now a friend of mine, which is really a wonderful thing.
that's amazing.
One of the things that I love about what you said when you're just talking about, you tell people, if you don't understand what I'm saying, please ask me to repeat myself. I think that does a few things. I think number one, it gives people permission to feel disarmed. If they're not grasping something you're saying, you're giving them the permission to be like, hey, I'm aware of this. I understand that this may happen, but you have permission to let me know, and it's not something I'm going to be offended by. We can work through it together because of the way that you communicate with other people. That helps other people communicate with you and create a more collaborative working environment. The other thing I like about that too is it's very much advocacy for yourself in a subtle way, but it's still advocacy, being like, hey, I know that, there are certain needs that I have and there are certain needs that you might have. So let me help you help me. And then all parties can thrive in that environment. And I think you do a great job of advocating for yourself and creating a very collaborative environment that allows people to approach you in a non-threatening way.
Well, exactly, and there are actors who, Sofia Vergara, I mean, she has an accent. Selma Hayek, those are actors who have accents. So I just see from the disability culture, this is my act. This is like how I speak. And that's what I call the difference. Self-efficacy within impediment with difference. Because it is a different speech pattern. I've evolved in terms of my own language and how I describe myself.
And as an entertainment professional, and you've worked in the industry for several years, how important is the authentic disability representation to you? And what would you say are some of your favorite examples of it?
It hurts my heart that it's still an issue because there are people like myself who've been advocating for this for years, probably as long as some of the next generation that's coming, the very amazing generation that's coming behind us that are amazing. This is not ever an issue with any other marginalized community. Certainly now, if the role called for a transgendered actor, they would hire a transgendered actor. They may not have done that 20 years ago, but they would now. So I'm thrilled because there has been a lot of progress. Like Tal Anderson, one of my favorite people on the planet, on the pit, and she did the other Emmy nomination. The real, I'm so thrilled, and Jesse there, who just played a doctor, I can't. And then the question is a dual thing. I do see a lot of progress, but I sometimes feel like there's two steps forward, one step back. So, yes, we have Cal Anderson on the pit. We have actors who are working on television series with a regular, recurring guest star on the pit, and she's a friend of mine, and I'm thrilled to get an Emmy nomination. Because we're so much and had a recurring role on the pit this year. I got to do a guest star. So there is progress, but yet I say two steps forward and one step back, because you still hear of inauthentic casting a non-disabled actor and a role specific. And you wouldn't do that in other marginalized communities. Maybe 30 years ago, you would have cast a cisgendered actor to play a transgender role. You wouldn't do that now. So I still feel as a community, we've made a lot of progress, but we have a long way to go. I'd like to step forward one step back.
That brings me to a question that I always think about, and I know that within the Disability Film Challenge community, we've also talked about this as well. But thinking about moving forward, how do we further progress for disability representation, both on screen and behind the camera within the creative process? Because obviously there's loud voices and any of us can be really loud and just yell, but I don't know if that's the most productive way to get the point across all the time. So it's just one of those things that I'm constantly thinking about. What does it look like to push the needle forward? And what I've come up with so far, but I'd love to hear your insights as well, is just really getting to know people within the industry. Like for me, a lot of people that I've worked with are people that are fully able-bodied, just because I want them to have the experience of working with someone with a disability and understanding this isn't as challenging or as out of left field as you might think it is. And I want those experiences to kind of normalize what disabled creatives can bring to the table, both on screen and behind the scenes. So I don't know, I guess relationship building for me is what comes to mind, is how do we progress forward? But I'm curious to hear your insights.
But the wonderfully complex question, because I think, again, I don't think there's a monolithic answer. For me, it's about building relationships. It's about maintaining gratitude for what I do have. So when I say to that bird one step back, I feel that's true. But I'm also incredibly grateful for the career I have. I think I've had some amazing, wonderful opportunities, and I want to make that clear. However, as a community, we still are not always maybe seen as the first choice. We still are, when we're cast the lead as non-disabled, this very specific, and again, being seen for roles that celebrate the human spirit. I keep bringing the pit up, but I will because in Hollywood Grit, a film I did last year, and the pit, neither of those roles were written at this specific. I just got cast. I got cast as the landlord. I got cast as a patient. So I think it really is finding those allies and then thanking the allies. When I get cast in something, I always send a thank you letter. We need advocacy for production access coordinated on set. So we're not having to do that ourselves because we're there to act. I don't think there's an easy answer, but I think we need to celebrate what we are doing and continue to create our own content as we can do with the Disability Film Challenge, as we did a 48-hour film challenge. It's easier than ever to create your own content. You may not get financial compensation, but it's easier now than ever to create your own content and then market yourself so you can get eyes on the content you're creating. And also remembering, every actor has to remember this is a business, right? You are the CEO of your company, and so a lot relies on us to continue to reach out to our allies and thank our allies. I think gratitude goes a long way. And hopefully, and also support each other. I know, I also think it's celebrating who our allies are. Sean Hayter won an Oscar for Coda, and now she's directing the film about the 504 process. She is an ally, but there's going to be a film that will be 100% authentically cast with the intersectionally diverse actors with disabilities. So it's celebrating our allies and also remembering that not everyone is going to get it and be on board. And I think that's one thing I've learned. Not everyone's going to get it. And if someone doesn't get it, I would rather spend my time with people who do. And that's not to put down anyone. It's like I would rather spend my time with you and Alex, where we can have a positive time, than always feeling like I have to convince somebody, and that can be really hard. I think we need to continue to do that, but we also need to continue to celebrate our allies and make new allies.
I really resonate with everything you're saying. And I want to go back to something you said earlier because it was a great transition to a question I actually already had. You were mentioning, it sounded like you were saying the role in the pit was not written for someone with a disability. And when you're able to get a role that's not necessarily written for someone like that, how does that make you feel? That must be such a win, right?
It's great, and that's been a lot of my career. When I did SWAT, I was the woman in the window. That wasn't. I think it was the elderly lady in the window, and so I cast in that. But yeah, the pit was huge, and it was December one episode from 8 to 9. And Kathy Rich casting was really committed to executive casting. Cast me, Seth Kasky, was the one that I believe brought me to the attention of Kathy. So it was a really wonderful opportunity, and here's a really neat thing. I was at the SAG building about a week ago. I was there for a PWD event, and Seth Kasky was there for another event, and he came up and said hello. So I got to thank him for that because it was so wonderful. But back to the question, it makes me feel good because we are not just our disabilities. And I think, again, I was a woman that was coming to the ER for chest pains. I've been to the ER on more than one occasion. Rarely has it had anything to do with my having cerebral palsy. It's because I had a really bad cold, because I cut my finger, but really hasn't been directly related to cerebral palsy. And one of the wonderful things about the You Can See a Disability Film Challenge is we get to cast ourselves in roles that celebrate their humanity. And when that can happen, I just want to see that happen more and more. And film and television projects that aren't related to the ETC Disability Challenge, but were just part of the complex humanity of storytelling and were visible as complex humans living our lives.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think that, well, first of all, I celebrate with you just what an accomplishment it was for you to be on the pit, which is in and of itself is amazing. But second, the fact that you were cast in a role that was not a disability specific role. And I think that when you talk about gratitude and also in the midst of the frustrations and the battles that we still fight within the community, things like that are definitely worth celebrating. I mean, it reminded me of something not quite as big as the scale of the pit, but still very significant for me. So last year I did this short film. It's like an action thriller called Murphy's Ranch, which played at like Holly Shorts and Slam Dance. And the character originally was never meant to be a visually impaired character, and it was never a character that had a disability. But the director actually saw like audio description, the Disability Film Challenge film at a festival, and went home and basically decided that he wanted to work with me. And he's like, this still works, bringing your experience and who you are to the table. But it was never his goal to be like, this is a disability specific role. And to me, that was still so significant that he saw that there could be creative potential to untap when you bring authenticity to any walk of life and you're able to portray that authentically on screen. He just said it unlocked a lot of creative possibilities that weren't there before. And so that's something that I've been very proud of, just being a part of that and the way that it organically happened too.
Well, when we think about it, and I love that, and congratulations, Lee. I would love to see that film, but I'm like a huge fan of yours. So,
Like right back at
but
you.
but here it is. What are film and television, and they're stories that we tell. They're moving stories, right? That a film is a moving story. That a television is a story, whether it's episodic or short film or a feature, a Bible now is still a story about a human experience. That's what it is. And deaf and people with disabilities, we are 25% of that human experience. But our lives, I just celebrated my parents' 67th wedding anniversary Sunday, August 2nd. That's a human experience for me as a daughter. Um, I love to go see my younger nephew perform. He wants to be an actor when he gets older, and he's taking class. He studies at LATSA. That's a human experience. Spending time with my older nephew, who is 19 and has grown up into this amazing young man. That's a human experience. So all we're asking is for that storytelling, which can be about heartbreak or betrayal or things that stories are told about disability and authentic representation of disability and the diverse intersectionality to be part of the representation of the cast that are telling these human stories of the human experience.
I know you've been in a lot of different projects, and this might be a really hard question to answer, but what would be the role that you would say you're most proud of?
I always answer it this way. That's like asking me which one of my nephews is my favorite.
Oh, for sure,
I
for
don't
sure,
have
yeah.
one. I don't. I love them both. Neither of them are my favorite. They are tied for my favorite. I will say this. Each experience has something that's really special about it. I would say when I did the pit and when I did SWAT, other than having those opportunities, when I did the pit, my scenes were not with Noah Wiley, but when I rapped, he came down and thanked me. And I have that picture of us on my Instagram. That was him coming to thank me for being on the show. That was amazing because he made that choice to come thank me from wherever he was. Like I said, my character did not have scenes with him, his character. So the fact that he chose to come say hello, that was really amazing. When I did SWAT, my scenes were with Shamar Moore, but the way we were filmed, I was looking at him from the outside, and I was in like what was my apartment. I said, "Officer, be careful." But we were in the scene, but it wasn't like we ever had lines together. I did my line and he came over and said that was really wonderful. And he's very handsome. So that was,
That
I
always
think
helps.
I think it was the first time I actually forgot. He asked me what my name was. I think I actually forgot my name for the first time. I was like, but I think the special moments are when someone thanks me for being a part of the project. And those are the special moments because, I'm still that very much that little 9-year-old girl who just wants to be an actor. That's who I am. I'm that little 9-year-old girl from Oak Park, Illinois, who said, I want to be an actor when I grow up. And I've had the people who told me my dream wasn't realistic. And I had an agent, a former agent, who told me I wasn't pretty enough and that the other actors would always be prettier than me. I've been told I should do things that are more realistic. I've been told why don't I teach other actors how to portray disability. But I've had those hurtful experiences, and that's part of my journey too. So those moments are really beautiful when the feedback I get after I do something, which is really lovely. Can I share a quick story?
Oh, of course, yeah, please.
Okay, so after the biggest thing I've done recently is the pit, and it's still something that people are like, I saw you on the pit. I did a rehearsal the other day, and when the actress is like, ooh, I saw you on the pit. So it's really nice. But one of the two nicest moments were I'm on Facebook. I'm back in touch with people I grew up with, and one of my friend Laura posted a picture of us when we were kids and said, this is my friend Diana. I remember the little girl with the stream. And my neighbor Vicky, who lived across the alley from me, said, I guess that little girl did all right for herself. And those are moments that touch me because they remember me, who I was. Right? They remember that little girl with the dream. Even though I haven't seen either of them in many years, they remember that. And those moments are super sweet. And I get to go over a few cool auntie points. So that's always lovely. Being an aunt is my favorite thing in the whole wide world. Nothing better.
That's so cool. I always love moments like that where it kind of reminds you of who you were and you can look back on who you were then. And then you can just kind of take a step back, and sometimes it can be surreal to be like, this is who I am now. And I don't want to say that any of us ever fully arrived, but it's like you're doing it now, you know?
Well, I think that if I could give a message to young actors or at this period, I think we need to take stock in that we're doing it. You know, whether you're doing a short film at a festival, whether you're creating your own content, you are doing it. You said you wanted to do this and you're doing it. I think this industry can make you feel if you're not an A-lister or whatever that you're not successful. And I really think it's important to define what success means for yourself. And to me, success is if you think you want to be an actor and you're acting, you made that dream come true. That's the beauty of success.
What
We don't always have control over whether we become famous but I do it because I have a passion for the craft. Yes, I want to book a series. I'm not going to say I don't, but my passion for the craft is what drives me. If I book a series, that would be great. I want that, and I put that out to God, the universe, everything. But I'm doing what that little girl said she was going to do. That little girl in Oak Park said she wanted to move to LA. She did. And now she's not with us and she has a couple more gray hairs. But, she's doing it, right? And that I'm very blessed and grateful to be able to say that.
one of the things I always remind myself of, as well as anyone else that's in the industry that I come across that may be feeling discouraged. And this goes to your point, is as an artist, if we want to create, no one can stop us from creating. Now, granted, we may not have control over how much mass appeal something that we create gets. But if we want to create, we can create. And regardless of who sees it, that's still a very vulnerable and cherished piece of who we are that can never be taken away from us once we make it. And I always try to reflect on that in the moments where I'm like, oh, have I done enough? And especially within Hollywood and just what Hollywood defines as success, it's so easy to get lost in all of that, whether you're disabled or not, and to think, oh, I haven't been in 10 feature films or haven't been a regular on a TV series. I'm not successful. But celebrating the successes that we do have and realizing if we're creating, we're doing it in some way, shape, or form. And that's not something to be taken lightly or to be taken for granted.
Right. And also, honestly, for me, even when it comes to disability specific, usually it's somebody who is neurodiverse. When they're looking for someone, it's neurodiverse, sometimes Down syndrome, deaf, someone who's deaf or hard of hearing, a wheelchair user. Rarely do I see things where they're looking for someone with cerebral palsy. So even within the disability, how Hollywood defines disability, I don't always get. I go out for things, and I have a team that cements me for a lot of roles, period. And I think also because I'm older, I'm getting called in for the grandmas now, which is fine. I don't think you ever get too old to play grandma, so I'll play grandmas for 20 years, whatever, that's okay. I'll be the little old lady on the park bench for another 25 years, that's fine with me. But I agree, and I think it's important. I teach workshops. You really need to define what success is for yourself. And I always say you need to define that and the things you have the most control over, like creating your art. You have control over that. You may not have control over how many people see it, but you have control over how you create it. And that, to me, is a beautiful definition of success.
Diana, do you ever get recognized when you're out?
A little bit, yeah. I would say this is a little bit. Well, for example, I'm doing a show, a improv medical drama. I had rehearsal on Zoom last night, and there was an actor who came on who I didn't know, and she's like, "Oh, I saw you on the pit." So a little bit. I mean, there are more people but occasionally I get arguing actors. I think I was on the bus. I was on the bus with my nephew once, and someone asked me if I was an actress. And my nephew's like, I told you were famous. I'm like, yeah. And so, it's not like all the time, but I have been recognized. But then it's,
What do people
I don't
recognize you
know.
from? Do they recognize you from the pit mostly?
A couple from the pit. More of it. I know I've seen you somewhere. It's more the kind of where have I seen you before? Are you an artist? Are you an actress? Sometimes it might be like my friend director Corey Reader. Someone I remember somebody. Oh, I'm a friend of Corey's. Oh, I'm a friend. I saw you in the short film because I'm a friend of the director. So there are instances like that as well. Or it might be a filmmaker who was at a film of a festival that a film I was in. So it's not like I can't leave my house. for all the people swarming outside my room. That's not at all. But I do get recognized from time to time, and it's nice, and I'm always like, I hope I'm not dressed in my sweats and looking really, and I hope it's after a day when I'm not super tired and that I look okay. But yeah, I do, and it's really nice. Here's what I like about it. If people coming up to me and making a choice, they come up to me and say something, and they don't have to do that you know. So I think it's very kind when people choose to come to me and say something. And I really appreciate that.
That's awesome.
Out of curiosity, as you kind of look forward into future dreams or goals, if you could guest star, or let's not even say guest star, but if you could be a part of any show that's currently running, or maybe it's like a reboot of an older show, what would be your dream show to be a part of?
I love sci-fi, and I just started watching Silo, and I think there's still so. I'm like, ooh, I love sci-fi. I love Paradise. And ironically, I met Sterling K. Brown because his son and my nephew went to the same elementary school, so they graduated at the same time. So I got up and I went. I really love you. I'm an oven that said, you know, thank you. Because even just there being a dad, and I'm meant to respect that. So, Paradise Silo, I love Westerns, and I don't think, so they're more genres than a specific show. I mean, I hear Taylor Sheridan, write wonderful roles for women. I think for me is being on a show where women are written, and mature women are written as complex human beings. And that's the type of role I would love to play. And I am dying to do a Lifetime holiday movie. I just want to be the person that owned the Christmas shop store that, was the best friend of the lead and the best friend of the lead. Her mom died, and I was the best friend, so now I'm like a mom to her. And I have that thing where I go, you've always loved Jimmy. Maybe you had a second chance. I love action. So it would be great. Whatever somebody wants to give me, I am open and ready to receive it.
That's amazing. I'm also a big sci-fi fan. To start to wrap up, though, we wanted to ask you, what is your favorite movie?
Oh my God. Again, that's like a
I
bit
know, it's a hard
messy
question.
question. Yeah, I think I will say this, and I have a lot, but I would say one of the movies that impacted me the most was Seeing Sounder when I was a kid,
Mm.
because it was the first time I saw a movie that had a predominantly African American cast. I saw Cicely Tyson, Paul Winfield, and I learned that movies can not only be entertaining but edutaining, because that was the first time I learned what sharecropping was. And that there were people that you worked the land and you weren't a slave, but you weren't treated with your respect and dignity. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about movies also being a vehicle for social justice and social education and edutaining. And Sounder was the first movie that did that for me. Because up until then I was in my Disney and kid movies because I was a kid. But my parents took me to the Sounder. I'm the older of two daughters. It was just the three of us. And that, I can still see us sitting in the theater, and then we went out to dinner and I had lamb chops. I mean, that was such a significant, and I'm vegan now, so it's really funny. But just sitting in the theater and learning about this part of the African American experience that I did not know about, and I learned about that through a movie. So that impacted also wanting to use my career as a vehicle for activism and social justice and for equity for multi-marginalized communities.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I love the power of film and how it can really speak to any of us on such a profound level, and in a lot of ways can be very life changing. And I think that just reminds me of why we do what we do as artists, because it does have the power to impact and inspire the next generation, or even to inspire more within the current generations as well.
And I think
And
at its core, that's why Lee and I love film so much. And that's why what motivated us to start the podcast. So that's really amazing.
Oh no, I love it. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that's why again we all create, and I continue. Sometimes there will be a line in the movie that will impact me. I just had this show. It was a Jennifer Gardner called Five Star Weekend, which is about five friends that come together. A really good movie. And there was a particular line that an actor had that struck me emotionally, and it made me cry. And I don't want to go into great detail, but that the power of that line allowed me to process through some things I was processing through at the time and opened me up a bit to feel the emotions I need to feel. So I'm as much as I love to do it, I have to receive. I learned so much from watching other people do it in other people's projects.
well said. And thank you so much, Diana, for being on our show. It's such a joy to have you on, and we really appreciate your very balanced perspective and just all the insights that you have to share from your experience. You have such a wealth of knowledge, a beautiful heart, and such a grounded perspective on everything. And we really appreciate you chatting with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. That was nice to hang out with friends. So I got to do that today. So thank you so much for having me too.
And Diana, do you have anything you want to promote? Any upcoming
Oh,
projects?
so yeah, if you, I'll put it this way, if you go to my Instagram and I'm at from the heart DEJ, from the heart DEJ on Instagram, I usually post everything I'm doing. I'm getting ready to do a show in a couple of weeks called Trauma Queen, to the improvised medical show, the Improv Theater, which is 1727 North Vermont. There are stairs there, and so when I promote a show, I do make sure people know about what accessibility issues are there might be. But that's what I have coming up, and I just did a 48-hour film challenge, and I believe that showing is on the 15th. But I will have all that on my Instagram. I usually do a lot of posting on my Instagram, and that's from the heart DJ, and that's also my TikTok. At from the heart DJ, and that's where I do a lot of my promotion. And follow me because I have to like to share wellness tips from time to time about self love and self empowerment. So you can follow me there.
Great. And we will definitely link that in the description of the episode as well.
Great.
And if any of the listeners out there, if you have any questions about anything we talked about today, you have any specific questions for Diana, obviously you can reach out to her on Instagram But you can also email us at darkroomfilmcast@gmail.com. Once again, that's darkroomfilmcast@gmail.com. And be sure to follow us on Instagram at Darkroom Filmcast and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Darkroom Filmcast.
Yeah, we always love to hear from our listeners. We'd also like to thank Jamie Guyon for editing and Matt Lauterbach for making the podcast fully accessible with captions.
And we'd also like to thank you so much for listening. We'll see you back here next time on The Darkroom.
Take care, guys.